Hello everybody, this is Christian from Blue vs. Orange TCG coming back to you with the finale of Character Quest Snapdragon. I'm really excited to bring to you our final deck list here that we ran for the Saturday event. The deck was a ton of fun to run. I'm honestly, I don't want to say surprised by this, but we actually did really well. There's a lot. I did a couple of last minute changes from our last deck list video that I showed you before to this one. Obviously there was a smaller turnaround time, so there was only 2 deck list updates versus this now third one here, which is the final one that we took to the event. But overall I think the deck did really solid against the field that was presented there. The event itself was a ton of fun. We ended up going 3-1, which gave us a top 4 finish in Swiss. I believe because of the one-day events and how they work, there's not a top cut. But we did finish 2nd overall in Swiss, which is super good. Something to be said about a character that before didn't see a whole lot of play, with another character that didn't see a whole lot of play. So I'm really excited to bring this list to you now. But before that, let's talk about the tournament a little bit more. So the matchups through the day, there were 4 rounds. I ended up playing first a match against Ansel Cox, playing Grapple, Fangry, Kreb, and Night Racer with the Grapple Stratagem from ATP 2, which gives them bold 1 tough 1 and an extra 3 health, I believe. Grapple can actually be kind of a menace in certain lists with that extra bold and tough 1 to help trigger his ability, and the extra health actually gets him up there a little bit. So it was a really interesting match. I ended up taking the first game pretty handedly, thanks to him missing all of his triggers and whatnot. And then he actually sideboarded into his own Snapdragon, which is actually really interesting, and he actually was able to take the match from me from a really strong top deck belligerence. And then it was really close to time. We played out our last game as long as we could, and then when time was called, I had just a little bit more health remaining than he did, so I won on time in that one and 2-1, so that was round 1. And then round 2, we get paired up against Ziggy, playing Impactor, ATP 3 Impactor, the Wrecker one, Dark Mount with his Stratagem, and Sea Spray, in this really interesting double tanks list. Sea Spray in bot mode gives the highest starred characters on your field extra +1 attack. Both Dark Mount and Impactor are 9 stars, so there was a lot of interesting synergies there. It was actually a pretty threatening deck list. Snapdragon's bot mode actually came in handy a lot there, because Dark Mount tends to rip your hand apart when you play, or when you're playing Dark Mount, you have to spend a lot of cards in your hand to activate the deal 2 damage to someone mode in his alt mode, and he wasn't able to net cards with Sea Spray anymore because of me being able to be in bot mode, to where he would draw 2, scrap 1, but he would have to scrap another one. So he never gained a lot of card advantage in his hand to be able to use Dark Mount's ability very often, which was super good for me. So I was able to take that one 2-0 because of that. And then round 3 was our loss. We went up against Overlord, who was being played by Timmy Albrecht. He ended up actually winning the whole event, so good job for Timmy on that one. Congrats on your Lunar Bee, by the way. I was doing pretty good game 1, I felt, for a little while. Then he hit a Leap of Faith into Belligerence and Energon Axe or something like that, to completely just obliterate one of my guys off existence, and I completely lost tempo there. And then game 2, he went too tall, and this is when I'm really upset. I wish I went too tall as well with Lord Megatron, our sideboard plan. I ended up not going into Lord Megatron at all today, or on Saturday, and if I did, it would have been right there. And for whatever reason, I chose not to do that. I'm regretting it to this day. So we lost that one 0-2. That was our one loss in Swiss. And then round 4, we went up against Richard Wyatt, who was playing a really cool Wheeljack Overwhelming Advantage list that plays Wrecker Wheeljack, Wave 1 Wheeljack, and Fireflight for that Brave. Both Wheeljacks have that innate bold, so that you're able to trigger off of your trigger OA pretty handedly, naturally. It was really interesting. However, the deck also runs It Works and uses Wheel of 1 Wheeljacks, draw and scrap 1 to filter out your cards to get your OA pieces built. And Snapdragon's bot mode ability just turns that off completely. He can't realistically play the It Works at all, because he'll draw 2, scrap 2, he'll play an upgrade, but then he has to scrap an extra card from his hand. So he ends up drawing 2, scrapping 3, and playing a card. So he completely debilitates it. So by doing that, he completely just gets rid of his hand by playing the It Works. So he never had a chance to play the It Works. It also made it awkward because he was forced to play upgrades not in card mode, while Wave 1 Wheeljack was on card mode, because every time he would have to draw 1, scrap 1, then scrap another one. So that matchup felt really, really good for me. That was the type of matchup that Snapdragon obviously does the best in. And we took that one 2-0, giving us our 3-1 finish and finishing top 4 or second place overall in Swiss, however you would like to consider it. Overall, though, it was a ton of fun, and I'm really glad that I was able to enter with this list. But, you know, now after that, let's get into the deck profile. So going through the characters again, no character changes from the last one. We did play the Snapdragon, Bonsai-tron, and Night Racer lineup. This lineup just felt super, super strong. Both these characters here, Snapdragon and Bonsai-tron, as weird as it is to say, they're both oddly flip intensive. Like, they're not like characters that you want to keep flipping over and over again throughout the course of a game, like Horrible is. But there's certain times where you have to time which mode each of these guys want to be in, right? So oftentimes you want to attack with Bonsai-tron in his bot mode, right? So that he can get the big swings off because he's base 5 attack. He has the bold one. He's really good being with belligerence, opportune offensive, you know, getting lots of pierce or getting like a really big attack number. But, you know, being able to flip to alt mode when the time enables you to look in your opponent's hand and play secret action is also really strong. And something I did a lot throughout the course of the day. But he also wants to defend this mode because he has the tough one. So it's kind of awkward, like, because you want to attack in this mode, so they'll probably attack him when he's not in tough mode. But, you know, sometimes you do want to attack in this mode with like a lot of pierce on you. And then Snapdragon, similar thing. Depending on the matchup, you want to be in either bot mode to stop their draws, or in alt mode to at least like have a sturdy character on the field. There wasn't too many times where like him stopping the repair or the move really came up, but that's a matchup to matchup thing. His bot mode ability does come up a lot more often. The bounty never really came up. I'm pretty confident I forgot to trigger it like once or twice over the course of the event, but overall it didn't like come up too often. Yeah, but this mode here in Snapdragon, just to preface again, he's so tough. He's so tough to kill. You know, only with like 16 health, you wouldn't think he's like, you know, 12 stars, 16 health, only 1 defense. He's not that hard to kill, but with the sturdy and the tough one he gets, plus we run a ton of armor, so being able to put an armor on him pretty effectively as well. He just became such a threat in this mode for bigger guy decks to like, because he just kind of like outpaced them after a little while, which made him just like feel really good. And of course his bot mode ability, whenever this triggered, just always felt like really good, right? Yes, your opponent can still like filter cards to their hand, so if they like draw an improvised shield, they can just scrap it if they drew into that. But it forces them to like, that's now one less card for them to pick up with the green, right? Like now you can't use that improvised shield to pick up a Noble's Blaster, things like that, right? It's these small things that build up over time that Snapdragon like does really, really, really well as like he feels like a control deck at its core, but like he also just feels like this weird like, I'm not sure if this is the right term, but almost like a ramp deck to a certain extent, because like you're ramping up your own characters with like upgrades, because you want to build up like pocket processor or data bank. We did put in a data bank in the deck. We want to put weapons and armors on these guys, and during this time your opponent's just trying to spend resources to get these guys out the board. But because of Snapdragon's bot mode ability, they can't net lots of cards in their hand because of that, and so we're actually able to outpace and play like a really big tempo game against a lot of decks because of this. So it was really interesting. I would not change this lineup at all, I don't think. If you're gonna go a Decepticon Snapdragon route, I'm sure we never tested any Autobot routes. I'm sure there is Autobot options here, like you could do Jazz and Highbrow as an option, for example. But as of now, I really, really like this lineup. It felt amazing, and I would definitely play it again. So we're just gonna set these aside and go towards the battle deck. So the battle deck, we ran 41 cards. Pretty standard, or it's pretty similar to what it was built on the last deck update on episode 3, I believe it was, except for a couple minor changes. And I did want to do this style of profiling other than just like having a post up on Teletran 1, because it allows me as the final that it is to kind of go over each card as its own, and to analyze it a little bit more throughout the matchup. So starting with the actions, we're going to go through what pumps actions we had. Starting off, we played 3 opportune offensive and 3 bigger they are, with 1 valiant effort and 1 belligerence. So this is our pump actions that we played in the one-day event that we finalized in our list here. They all felt like really, really good. Opportune offensive, obviously we're a Merc deck, so we can play this on either Bonsai-tron or Night Racer to get excuse me, to get some damage in. Sometimes the +3 is all you need. Sometimes the +3 and the Pierce 3 with like Night Racer on a bigger guy was what was really important. Overall, it honestly just felt more like a 4th, 5th, and 6th copy of Bigger They Are, which is also super good in the list. This card is a little bit better. I like this card better than Opportune Offensive in the list because I can't play Opportune Offensive on Snapdragon. Well, I can still at least play this for +2 on the Snapdragon, which was still, it's still like a good thing to do. Still pretty important. Something to note is half these action pumps cannot be played on Snapdragon, so that made things feel a little awkward in hand, for lack of a better word, with like pump actions. But oftentimes you didn't really want to pump Snapdragon anyway. You wanted to pump Bonsaitron, so it still felt pretty okay. The Valiant Effort felt absolutely amazing. Because we don't have any Autobots, Bonsaitron is considered a leader in both modes. So I was able to play this on him if Night Racer is on the field, or even Snapdragon's bot mode ability. Or even if Snapdragon is in bot mode, I get the ping one also because both of those are ranged, right? And so anytime I had this Valiant Effort in hand, it always felt like such a really big tempo push whenever I swung with Bonsaitron. It always felt amazing. I would never take this out. I don't think I put it more to 2 ever. There were times where I did see it after Bonsaitron it was dead, and I'm like, this is now just like a zap. Very, very situational zap. So it didn't feel great. We don't run a lot of direct damage in this list, so I could see bumping this up to 2 just to have that extra like ping 1 may not be too bad. But I loved it at 1. Obviously these were really good, and then the Belligerence obviously is just like really good. Bonsaitron having Bull 1 actually makes this feel a lot better, and I could even see playing a second one in the main board just because of that. But that is what we ran for pump actions. So let's get these out of here. Next up, we are running Night Racer and Bonsaitron, which do heavily have abilities associated with secret actions. So we are playing 9 secret actions, a fair amount. So going over those, we have 3 despite any difficulties, 2 sabotage armaments, 2 on hostilities, a stable cover, and an infiltrate here. I'm just gonna move these down like this. So these secret actions, I went through a lot of different decisions on what secret actions I wanted to run and I thought was best fitting for the format I expected to go into. You saw me test things like Bolster and Jam Signals before. Both those cards did not feel very good, even in a heavier control blue format. The Jam Signals just never felt very good because a lot of the blue actions that blue decks play are secret actions, right? So because of that, we actually ended up going with this lineup here, the three despite any difficulties. That's pretty obvious. It's the best secret action that's around right now. Being able to defend, get up to +4 on a defense because of how this works. And for anyone who doesn't know, who's watching, it's when you reveal this card when a character is defending, and then it's basically Master Metallicado, but for defense. For each different color you flip, you get +1 defense up to +4. So you don't get up to +5, but you can get up to +4. We do run a fairly multicolored deck, even though it's still mainly a bluish, kind of blackish deck. Excuse me. We can consistently get up to +2, +3, +4 defense with this card, and it's also good on attack because it does have a black pip. It felt really good. I would not play this any less than 3, in my opinion, in the list. Next up, we play 2 sabotage armaments. Pretty standard for blue list. You don't really want to play 3; it gets pretty clunky sometimes. But this is also just a really nice safe card to play. As a secret action, you can flip Bonsaitron to alt mode, look at your opponent's hand, see if they got a really strong weapon in hand. You could then play the Sab Arms down from his ability to kind of prevent that. And sometimes your opponent can play around that if they predicted Sab Arms. If they could just choose not to play the weapon and play it later. But that means it's one less turn that they get to play the weapon when they probably needed it most then. So it gives your opponent less opportunity to play the turns that they want to, which is really important. Same thing with the hostilities. This card's just generically good. We run, I believe, 7 orange pips in the deck. And so because of this, we do want to we don't mind setting this kind of early because we sometimes do flip a lot of oranges on defense, especially with Tough One from Night Racer. Good against orange decks, really good against the OA deck I went up against. And then this could have just been easily sided out. It's also a really good side out card against the Blue Mirror if need be. And then these were the 2 1-ofs here. The Infiltrate and the Stable Cover. The Infiltrate was amazing the whole tournament. There were times where I would see a Belligerence in my opponent's hand from Bonsaitron's flip to alt mode, and I could set the Infiltrate, And really just setting a secret action just kind of deters people from playing belligerents anyway. But just in case they did and they ran into it, the infiltrate was there to take it. It took wedge formations. It took a treasure hunt. This thing just took a lot of cards. Like there's like the format's heavier on blue, but a lot of blue decks splash a lot of really strong orange actions aside from just belligerents in decks as well. And this also just hit that also really well. Granted, it never hit 2-pronged attack when I played against Overlord, which probably is what the main card I was hoping to hit, but that's okay. Playing that 1 felt fine. I could see you playing it at 2 if you really felt like a meta call, but for now I think 1 was good. Symbol cover also felt really good. Generically, it's a black on attack. There was like a fair amount of pierce going around in the format, so like I was able to set this against like a fusion bore I saw in my opponent's hand and be like, okay, you can play the fusion bore, but I'm not gonna get pierced here. This card is also really good. I would definitely choose to either play, depending on the meta call, you could up these to a certain amount of numbers as well. But the secrets felt very good, very good. I was happy with the secrets I chose. And then going over the last of the actions, these are just like the one-ofs that I played. We played 1 catch off guard, a single espionage, a single counter espionage, a single 100 down, and then we went down to just 1 system reboot. So system reboot was a card at the very beginning I was really hyped up about with Snapdragon, and I wanted to play 3 of them. Or I started off playing 3 of them, and honestly, and ironically, down to the finals, I only played 1 because it just felt so awkward to play sometimes. It can either be like one of the best cards you can ever play in the whole deck, or it can just feel really bad seeing it in hand, because like we want to draw a lot of cards. We actually have like a lot of weird ways to draw a lot of cards in the deck, and so like when we have like 5, 6, 7 cards in hand and we draw into this, it's like, well, I'm not going to play this right now. I have no need to. And that made it really hard to play. It's still like a really fantastic card in the list. We hit some pretty nutty hands in the tournament by playing this 1 card, but I don't think I'd play it any more than 1. I could see you sideboarding into a second one depending on the matchups, but main board 1 felt the best it's ever been. And then we stuck with the 1 hunger down. For a while we were playing 2. Now we're back down to 1 with the Bonsaitron. Our tank package is very small, but that's okay. I've actually come to grips with like the tank package of battle cards that you can run is so strong, even if it's just 1 character, that playing just like a couple 1-ofs can actually create like a really interesting like explosive like turns in your list just by these existing. Like just the fact that Hunker Down exists and that I could potentially draw it and play it on Bonsaitron was just so good and just worth playing as a 1-of. It was just like never it was dead sometimes, but I was totally okay with it being dead because it just like the benefit that it played completely outweighed the cons. And then we do have our 2 hand disruption cards here in espionage and counter espionage. These cards always felt good. Being able to flip Bonsaitron to alt mode with an armor to look at your opponent's hand, potentially play a secret, but more importantly, you get to see what's in their hand. You can play around it. You can play a counter espionage to get rid of certain actions. You can play espionage to get rid of certain upgrades. And because these are green, they always felt really good sitting in my hand. I wouldn't change this. I wouldn't change this at all. I could see maybe a second counter espionage in the sideboard, but honestly, like, I think you need to mainboard these anytime you play Bonsaitron, in my opinion. It just felt that good. And then just our 1 form of action removal, the catch off guard. Catch off guard and take by surprise aren't nearly as good in Titan 1 as they are in full constructed formats, ironically. But I didn't want to get like sniped by like Living Weapon Megatron or anything like that, because he doesn't see a whole lot of play, but when he shows up and people aren't prepared for him, he can wreck face. And so I at least wanted 1 form of like bounce removal than versus like say like a smelt or a vaporize. Otherwise, if you're not too concerned about it, I could see playing a smelt over this personally, but it was still pretty good throughout most of the day. So that was the actions we played. We played 22 actions in this deck. It's definitely heavier on the actions than upgrades. That's pretty common for deck construction, especially for control decks like this. So honestly, I really wouldn't change anything in the action list. I could, like I said before, I could see maybe swapping out some of the 1-of secret actions depending on what your meta is or what your meta call is. But it was really good, and I wouldn't change it. Now onto upgrades. Let's go to the weapons. We played the 1 Soldier's Blaster here. Soldier's Blaster felt amazing the whole game, the whole tournament. When I first built this deck in like the first episode, you remember me not including this card. Huge mistake. This card's amazing. Any Merc deck, there's no reason not to play this. It's a green +3 for your Merc. it gets Autobot decks. It's good against Autobot decks as well for Decepticon guys. There was just no reason for me not to play this. So anytime you're playing a Merc deck, you have to include one Soldier's Blaster, in my opinion. And then we do have 2 Scoundrel's Blasters. Again, we wanted this like suite of like green weapons here. For our characters, we wanted to always ensure we had a weapon to play on our characters. Bonsaitron, being able to put him up to 7 base attack is like huge, like for an 8-star. Like that's something you can't really ignore too well. As an opponent playing against that, right? And all they just felt pretty solid again. And then we are playing the Energon suite of 2 Energon Axe and 1 Energon Mace. I'm starting to see this lineup a whole lot more in tournaments, because things like Galaxy Prime, Jazz, just a lot of certain Autobot characters are actually like pretty weak against this, and they're seeing a lot more play. So I could see, like, I'm seeing this mace get bigger in use, and I can only see it getting honestly larger as like the game goes on. So I've mainboard one of this, and this is also really good for Snapdragon, because like unlike Scoundrel's Blaster, I can't play it, or I can't play Scoundrel's Blaster on Snapdragon, but I can play this on Snapdragon. And then 2 Axe, pretty standard for blue decks. 2 Axe is like still one of the best weapons in the whole game. Plus 3 attack, Pierce 2, Blue Pip. It's hard not to consider playing it. You do have to be damaged to play it, of course. And we're not really playing a whole lot of like the self-damage cards in the deck, so it definitely felt better than it has in other lists, but it still felt like good. It didn't feel like at all like it was a bad card to play. And our last upgrade is actually, or our last main weapon is a Sturdy Javelin here. I did end up keeping the Sturdy Javelin in the Bonsaitron list. It's a really weird card because you can play it on Night Racer, which is good. You can play it on Snapdragon's bot mode as a range character, and it's pretty good. And then Bonsaitron in bot mode can play this, and Snapdragon in alt mode can play this. So it's just like another +2 weapon. It's another white, and it's a little bit more utilitarian than the rest of these other weapons here. As you can see, like the 6 weapons here, they're basically just built off of raw damage. While this at least gave us a little bit more utility in the fact that we could put this and do a little bit of direct damage, but that's really it. It was fine. I wouldn't take it out personally. It felt pretty good. But I could see where you would want to take this out for any other spot. I guess I could, yeah, I would consider this a flex spot. This is definitely a flex spot, and same with this too. But I honestly really like this like Energon trio of weapons here. I expect to see this a lot more in the future. Oh, and then last three weapons, 3-handed blaster. Shocked, not shocked. We're a blue deck. We want our double pips in there, so it's especially because the deck actually relies on tough a lot more than some other decks out there in the format right now. So we do just play the 3-handed blaster. So pretty standard. 10 weapons. I would not. I'd change the Sturdy Javelin if you wanted to, but otherwise it felt fine. Like the weapons felt pretty good the whole tournament. Now onto the armors here. We are running 6 armors. We got 2 Scrapper Gauntlets, a Sparring Gear, Covert Armor, and then our small tank package armors of Composite Armor and Ghost Shield. So going over the Scrapper Gauntlets first, this was another change that I made last minute here to both, since our episode 3 deck list was 2 Scrapper Gauntlets. I originally only had 1, but this card's super good. Like this card is just amazing. You can play it just does so many things, right? You can play it onto Bonsaitron. Even if there's not a weapon, you can draw a card, and then you now have a weapon, or you now have an armor for him for his alt mode ability. This gets rid of weapons. This gets rid of axes, blasters. It gives +1 defense. I mean, like this card is just so good not to play in a lot of these decks. A lot of decks are playing at 1. I think with the Hunker Down, we totally felt fine playing this at 2. There is argument to be said that one of these could have been a mainboard Bashing Shield, and I think that's totally a fine call. I didn't expect a whole lot of armors in this metagame, so I opted to just like have the Scrapper Gauntlets to at least more easily like keep damage off of my guys than to like use a Bash Shield to increase my own damage tempo, because we do play a fair amount of Pierce in the list. I didn't feel too strongly about it. And we're not like a heavy direct damage deck, so I didn't really care about opposing Holomatters either. So I felt like the Bash Shield didn't need to be mainboarded at all. This felt really good. Again, this second one's still definitely a flex spot if you don't want to play a second one. Totally room for improvement there. And then we do have our green armors right here. Sparring Gear and Covert Armor. Sparring Gear honestly felt pretty good throughout most of the event. It's actually one of the few times I've played Sparring Gear since like Wave 5 like first came out. It felt really good to actually be able to slot this back in the deck again. The fact there's an orange pip actually felt really good because I actually did want like a fair amount of orange pips in the deck. Top 2 felt good. This one, kind of a weird card. You don't see this card too often. Of the trick armors, it's covert armor. Good against specialists. You only put on melee. We have 2 melee characters, and honestly, there's so many more specialists running around with like Major Shockwave, HP2 Soundwave, Record Wheeljack, even Sea Spray, even though she has Pierce in bot mode. In alt mode, doesn't have the Pierce and is still a specialist. A lot more room to play this in the format. And also, I mean, +1 defense is nothing to like, be upset about either. So, card felt really good. I wouldn't change it. I definitely wouldn't change these. And then our small tank package. The composite armor and the ghost shield. These are definitely, as not surprised that is, the armors that we've played the least often in the event. But when we played them, it just felt so good. The pairing of like Hunker Down into Ghost Shield with Bonsaitron is just deplorable. It's fantastic. Even just like being able to, like, if you go second and you have a composite armor in hand, just set up your Bonsaitron. Being able to set up your Bonsaitron early with the composite armor is just super handy. It felt super good. We did get Ghost Shield onto Bonsaitron once in the event, and Bonsaitron never died. He just never died. It was incredible. So this tank package here, it's pretty small, but I've actually been really excited about it. Like the fact that these 3 cards right here actually made such impressive tempo plays in the deck throughout most of the tournament. Even if even if you don't see it, right? We play 6 armors. We don't mind having to play a Ghost Shield over a Scrambler Gauntlets. It can happen. It totally can happen. So yeah, this felt amazing. The armors felt really tight throughout the event. They felt really tight. And the last 3 cards are our 3 utilities. We ran a data bank, a pocket processor, and a crushing size. Just going over the obvious, crushing size, a lot like Scrapper Gauntlets. There's a lot of utilities in the format. Being able to play this and bust up an energy pack or an enhanced power cell or another pocket processor is huge. It gives our smaller characters Pierce 1, which is also really important because you can play this in opportune offensive onto Night Racer. Now she's Pierce 4. Standing any black pips, you flip on attack. And if you play it, you can potentially draw cards. There's no utility, so there's just like no downside to playing this. And then the weirder options here is the pocket processor with the data bank. Our deck actually really wants to have lots of cards in hand because we need battle cards in hand to make a lot of our big splashy plays. With like Bonsaitron flipping to be able to play Secret and another action, having the armors in hand to be able to like activate Bonsaitron to be able to protect Snapdragon, things like that. It's a deck where some would call a double pocket processor type list, which don't come up too often, but there are decks that totally feel okay with running 2 pocket processors. This deck list, I didn't feel it that comfortable. That's why I'm running the data bank instead of the second pocket processor. Pocket processor felt really good, obviously. But because we're already running the Soldier's Blaster, which is another just mono green pip card, I didn't want to have 3 mono pip cards in my already like kind of splashy colored deck list anyway. And so this data bank actually felt like really good. Because like I only really needed the pocket processor in most games, but if there was games where I could fit this data bank in, it was huge. Like there was one of the games in the tournament where I was able to put both of these onto 2 of my characters here, and it was just like I'm just gonna draw 3 cards at the beginning of my turn, and I had plays. I always had plays in my hand, and it felt amazing. I could see this again is totally a flex spot if you don't like it. These 2 are definitely not. I think you have to mainboard these in my opinion. But this one, if you want to risk the second pocket processor for the green instead, you can. If you want like another utility like power cell for your characters, totally fine. It makes sense. But I really like the data bank, and I don't think I'd change it out at all. All right, and going over our sideboard, we did play the Lord Megatron with Bow Before Me. It was really good in our testing, but again, we didn't like have too many times in the tournament where we actually like went out of our way to play it. But other than that one time against Overlord, which we should have. But the sideboard for this list is pretty standard. It's a disarm, a second hunker down, a second stable cover, the second and third belligerents, bashing shield, stable scoundrel's blaster. Let's move these down a little bit more here. Third scoundrel's blaster, hollow matter, lock on lasers, and a second composite armor. So going over the sideboard list. So first of all, these here, the bashing, the hollow, and the composite armor here. These are mainly to kind of increase our tank package for when we bring Lord Megatron in. I thought it was really important that if we brought Lord Megatron in, we at least like, because he is like a tank that really wants certain upgrades on him, that we at least feel pretty comfortable like playing a second Hunker Down, second Composite, and then these 2 utility armors. Because like that's kind of what Lord Megatron wants. He wants those armors to be able to like make you flip more cards in alt mode when he flips to that mode. And the third Scoundrel's Blaster is actually part of this like sideboard plan for Lord Megatron as well, because Lord Megatron wants Scoundrel's Blaster because it's a Decepticon upgrade, and a stratagem gives him +1/+1 when he's upgraded with the Decepticon card. So Scoundrel's Blaster becomes the +3 attack, +1 defense on Lord Megatron. It's huge. You need to see it consistently. So I totally don't mind running 3 of them in the main board, or putting a third in the main board when you go into Lord Megatron for that very reason. Again, didn't really touch a lot of these except for the Bastion Shield. I did put the Bastion Shield in sometimes, because this one, even though it's part of this like kind of tank package sideboard plan, you can still play this pretty easily outside of that. But again, that didn't come up too often. The other sideboard cards definitely came up a lot more. Of the 2 belligerents, makes sense. We're in a control heavy environment. We want to be able to like push these big tempo plays as much as possible. Belligerents does that, and it's really bad against orange, so playing just 2 I think was totally okay. The second Sable cover against the Pierceless. Disarm. Disarm is something I didn't bring in at all, but like against things like Galaxy Prime or even Menasor, Disarm's like feels pretty good against like these Voltron upgrade all your character style decks. And then 1 lock-on lasers again for Menasor. I think we actually had like a pretty decent Menasor matchup altogether because of like how Snapdragon operates. He feels like a very good counter to Menasor, and I just wanted to make that matchup a little bit better with pretty much all of these. The Infiltrate in the main board, if it's against a blue deck that doesn't play any oranges, you just take it out and play in a second Stable cover most of the time. These 5 cards, they felt really good. They felt really good in the sideboard the whole tournament. So if you didn't want to play such like a big like extended tank package on the sideboard, I could totally see like these 5 coming out for other options. I think that's totally cool. But I would definitely keep the Lock, the Disarm, the Stable, and these Belligerents. These felt really good in the sideboard the whole time. And that has been Character Quest Snapdragon, everybody. I hope you really enjoyed this. I had such a good time doing this series. I had such a good time building this deck, playing the games, playing the test games. Overall, I think the deck is really solid. I really like the deck where it's at right now. I think there's still totally room for polish. Nothing's ever perfect. I think you could still like totally like polish this deck for different metagames, maybe different like upgrade or color ratios. Totally something that you can totally do. I really encourage everyone to give this deck a shot. It was a lot of fun to play. It did really well in the tournament again. Like I said, I got second place in Swiss, which is great. We succeeded in our goal at the beginning of the series to top an event with Snapdragon, a character I've never played or built before. So we did that, and I cannot wait to do this again. I expect another Character Quest series in the future. Depending on what character we do, please leave suggestions in the comments if you're watching this far. I would love to hear what people would want to see a Character Quest for. I think that'd be fantastic. But overall, expect more videos in the future, and thank you all so much for watching, and thank you for following me on this journey, and I hope to see you again on the next one, alright? Have a great day.